What is up, everybody? I'm NoLucksGiven, back with some more Hearthstone Battlegrounds content. I don't think there's going to be any gameplay in this video, because I think we've got a lot to cover with Battlegrounds Season 6 that has just begun. So I haven't talked about Season 6 starting at all yet here on the channel, to be honest. Kind of snuck up on me. I thought I was going to have more time with Season 5. And honestly, I want to start there because I just want to say how much fun I had with Season 5 of Hearthstone Battlegrounds. I'm optimistic that this will be fun as well, but I really enjoyed, up till the very end, all of the craziness and wackiness that came with anomalies, and I hope that we'll get them again soon. And I think that they just did a great job of keeping every single game fresh and interesting and giving you new rewards for exploring different things in a way that even myself, as a small Hearthstone Battlegrounds content creator, was able to have replayability that I did not hit the cap of. I probably did not get close to hitting the cap of by the end of the season. So just wanted to do a little bit of a toast to anomalies there. But there's something cool coming in Season 6 as well. It's probably the title thumbnail of this video, because I think that there might be some interest for it for Storybook Brawl players. Now, there's going to be something else for Storybook Brawl players coming down the line, not in Hearthstone Battlegrounds, that you'll definitely want to stay tuned to the channel to see what's going on there. But for now, Battlegrounds is getting spells. So I'm not going to read through this too much, but I'll leave links for both of these articles in the video description. But I actually, let's see, does this change tabs? No. Oh, because I'm already on tab 2. Okay, great. This is the patch notes. This is going to go over all of the spells that are coming to Battlegrounds, and as someone with maybe a little bit more familiarity with spells in auto battlers than some other people, I think I'm actually in a unique position to kind of talk about these things before just jumping into a game. And I also want to do that because without that, so there's like two reasons. One, I kind of want to get my take on which spells I think are going to be good and which ones I think are going to be bad, so that way I can either be proven right or wrong about them. So I'd like to do that with a little bit of a blind eye. And I forget the second reason. Maybe it'll come to me. Let's hop into the content here. So Battlegrounds Season 6 is starting with Tavern spells, and Tavern spells are going to function very, very similarly to how they did in Storybook Brawl. Each spell is going to have an associated tier. By the way, I did read through a lot of this briefly, but in terms of like the specific spells, there's still a lot that I don't know about, and the specific minions. But I did browse it over because I figured maybe I'll just hop in a game, but it seems like there's so much, and I do think that I've got a unique perspective here that I am going to just cover it in a patch breakdown video of sorts. But each spell has a Tavern tier and a cost associated with it, which is very familiar to Storybook Brawl players, kind of different for Battlegrounds players though, where everything typically costs 3. Now, if we take a look at a spell, we can see the cost in the top left-hand corner, and it'll have effects, and there's some extra info as far as how spells function. We'll probably get into most of that as things go along, but basically there is always going to be a spell in the shop. And distinctly from Storybook Brawl, I don't believe that there is a limit in terms of casting one spell per turn. You're only limited by your coin, something that the other Storybook Brawl successor is somewhat playing around with as well. But we're going to just see that you're allowed to play unlimited spells in this game. So let's take a look at the spells. Now, the interesting thing about the spells, because Tavern Coin, gain 1 gold for 1 coin, actually does nothing. If you are used to thinking about it in terms of Storybook Brawl. But where the difference comes from is in Battlegrounds, when you buy a spell, you hold on to it in your hand. And then you have flexibility in terms of when you want to cast the spell. Now, I think that a lot of spells are, just the few that I've seen so far, are kind of going to fit under this umbrella of moving around your econ while not really accomplishing anything. Of course, Tavern Coin, there's no reason to not purchase this and cast it, other than like some specific examples that I can think of. But even if you are just rolling, you should always buy this. It's similar to a, I think it might be called Free Dealing Gambler, the 3-cost pirate that sells, well, everything's a 3-cost pirate. The tier 2 3/3 pirate that sells for 3. Pretty similar thing going on here with the Tavern Coin, kind of like a golden chicken from Storybook Brawl, no reason not to grab it. However, much like the golden chicken and the Free Dealing Gambler, you can grab this, hold on to it, and then have more econ on a future turn. Of course, things like this are going to trigger spells. There is a new hero that cares about spells, rather, and things like that are going to be important. I've already had way too much to say on just this first spell, but it's very innocuous. Gotta clear my throat for a second, apologies. It's a very innocuous looking spell, but there's still a lot that you can do. This also adds the potential to econ early in the game when you don't get randomly given econ on turn 1. Now, you still have to randomly be given this. There's other tier 1 tavern spells that you could potentially see instead. But you could just buy Tavern Coin on the first turn of the game and hang on to it and then level up on turn 3 or buy 2 minions on turn 3. Those are all possibilities, and one thing that is definitely also possible is turn 1, buy Tavern Coin, roll, buy Tavern Coin. And then you'll have 2 Tavern Coins in your hand. That could allow you to go 4-on-4. You'll take a lot of damage in the process because you'll lose the fights guaranteed those first 2 turns unless your opponents have done the same thing. But it just adds some interesting flexibility in terms of the econ that I'm very curious if we're going to be able to take advantage of. I'm sure that's going to happen in the thousands of games of Hearthstone Battlegrounds that get played every single minute. There's going to be players that turn 1 coin, roll coin. And that's a pretty powerful start that you can only do in with spells now, and sets you up interestingly. I guess you could do it with like Elemental or Busker or something, like, arguably as well, or even the Shell Collector is just like picking up 2 things of econ. That's kind of the goal behind it, but it yeah, I don't think it'll ever be bad. I don't know. I'm just thinking, well, let's move on. We've got a lot of other things to talk about. I've said a lot already about a spell that does nothing, but it does a lot more than nothing. Next up is Pointy Arrow, 1 gold for 4 attack. In the early game, this isn't going to be super interesting. However, throwing this on something like an Annoyatron or anything else with a Divine Shield can definitely get you by through a few fights, and is probably more important than just picking up 1 minion, is having a Annoyatron with a pointy arrow on it. Now, 2 things that are interesting that I'm seeing is that this, and then also Fortify, which we've got right here, do not say the word friendly on them, which means you can cast these spells on things in the shop. That's going to be interesting ways to pump up your free flying Featherbanes, and it's also just gives you a little bit more flexibility with that. The other thing that I will say with these kind of cheaper spells that aren't super powerful immediately is they give you something to do on turn 3. For non-econ heroes, having access to spells on turn 3 and just gives you something to do with that extra 2 gold in games where you're not using Lucky Coin or a token generating minion or something. So you could just put Fortify on, I don't know, even like a 2-3, and then all of a sudden you've got a 2-6, and that can actually battle. That can trade with 2 of your opponent's 2-3s. So that's a nice little way to gain some additional combat prowess. Let's move on. We've got Tavern Dish Banana, give a minion +2/+2. Kind of a hedge between Fortify and Pointy Arrow, just splitting the stats. And then Them Apples, give minions in the Tavern +1/+3. Again, it's just another distribution for +4 with the taunt essentially acting as another thing here. It's not super great, especially like unless you want to lock, I was going to say, because this is just going to give the minions currently in the tavern. This isn't give your tavern +1/+3 permanently for the rest of the game. That would be way too good at 1 cost for a tier 1 thing. That's a gingerbread party. That's a tier 4 or tier 3 spell that costs about 3. But Them Apples, it really depends on how many uses you can get out of it. And in the early game, you're not super interested in locking, because another way to get +1/+3 on your minions is to just not lock the shop and then see higher tiered minions the next turn. So I don't think Them Apples is going to be super useful. I'm sure there are scenarios where it will be played, but for the most part, it's just going to be like a different flavored Fortify, an apple flavored Fortify, if you will. Recruit a Trainee. Tier 1 for 2 gold, get a random tier 1 minion. This is an interesting card. Okay, hopefully the camera stuff is all straightened out. Recruit a Trainee, get a tier 1 minion randomly is another way to potentially find tokens. Elemental, Busker, Naga in the early turn to potentially give you econ. So I feel like we're really going to see there's just a lot of ways to easily level to tier 3 and tier 4 in the early game with Recruit a Trainee and Tavern Coin. Having access to both of those seems pretty good. Enchanted Lasso, another tier 1. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of tier 1 things. Steal a random minion from the tavern. Just let you get a little bit extra econ. I'm wondering if any of these econ spells do enough that you don't level on turn 2. I don't think so. And the problem with all of this, like with Enchanted Lasso, it really doesn't do anything on turn 1. It's just going to be a skip. Same thing with Recruit a Trainee, like some of the time it basically is just like a free roll, if you want to think of it that way, because instead of picking one of the 3 things that are currently in the... Oh, it's not even Discover. No, it's just a random one. Okay, so it's just like if your options are all like really, really terrible, then you could grab it. But the other scenarios for it are like a little bit of econ. Same thing with the Enchanted Lasso. A little bit of econ in that it's cheaper to add something to your hand. However, it's not cheap enough that it really has any impact on the early game. It's just a cheaper way to do things in the late game and potentially get some additional value out of it. Now, if your plan is to just sell the random minion in the tavern or the random tier 1 minion, then you're costing yourself gold. So we'll see how interesting these things actually are, because a lot of times they're just going to cost you gold unless you have something to really take advantage of that tier 1, or unless you hit the random minion that you are really interested in. Sometimes it's going to be worth it to gamble rather than just directly buy the thing, and sometimes you're going to be interested in multiple things that are available, but there's going to be other times where the Enchanted Lasso just misses and then you're upset. So in Storybook Brawl, this gave the card +1/+1. It was called Roll the Die, and you cast it just for the +1/+1. Oh, you know what I'm also missing? Okay, this is a big part of Enchanted Lasso more than it is the spell above, Recruit a Trainee. Enchanted Lasso, you could buy it hang on to it, and then wait till you're a higher tier or the shop is better till you use it. So there's actually a little bit of interesting stuff at play here. And then careful investment. So this costs 1 and gives you 2 gold next turn. So it actually does net you gold, and this is our first tier 2 spell. Yes. So now we're actually getting somewhere with the spells, and I see that the next spell is also an econ spell. I mean, careful investment, if you find that on turn 3, turn 4, a lot of the times you're not going to want to cast it, and even turn 5, because the econ is so tight on those early turns of the game. But like any time after that, it's just money. It's just like buying a golden busker when you have a brand. It costs you a little bit of gold right now, but it's going to give you more gold next turn. So it's worth it. And not really too much else to say other than that. It's pretty straightforward, but yeah, you will have to watch in terms of when you can cast it in the early game. Econ's just going to be a lot more flexible. That's going to be a really interesting thing into this new season, but we'll see if careful investment is like a huge part of that. I feel like it's just going to be a late game thing this is lucky coin. Careful investment is lucky coin. Slightly delayed though. And of course, you'll probably want to cast it as soon as you purchase it rather than hanging on to that one. Now, overconfidence, I think, is a little bit different. You might be able to hear a neighbor dog barking and Lily perking up a little bit here. If you win your next combat, gain 3 gold. If you tie, gain 1. So this was a Storybook Brawl spell. It did not give you the if you tie, gain 1. It was just if you win, gain 3. So this is even a little bit better. We've lost Lily. Spinning Gold, I believe, was the name of the spell from Storybook Brawl, and this is notably different in 2 ways. So first of all, I do think that Spinning Gold was a good spell and actually just like really great for the game. I think that ways that allow you to press a tempo advantage in the form of econ are really good. I think that that's a cool feature in Teamfight Tactics as well. Overconfidence / Spinning Gold allow you to do that, right? They allow you to say, I'm going to bet on myself. I'm actually going to spend 1 gold. I'm going to take a risk here that my tempo is good. So I actually, that adds like a whole nother level on top of it. There's 2 things to note about that. 1, the fact that you have to spend a gold makes you weaker. And that's kind of an interesting aspect of this. However, with Hearthstone Battlegrounds specifically, the way that spells work, and to compare everything to Storybook Brawl, apologies if you've never played Storybook Brawl, but there's a huge difference here that you can purchase Overconfidence, hang on to it, and then when you are actually rightfully confident and are pretty sure that you're going to be able to win, potentially save it for when you are up against an eliminated player or somebody that's disconnected or something like that. Or even just, once there's an odd number of players left in the lobby because somebody's been eliminated, then this is just free. So that adds a lot more flexibility. I think that this is going to be something that you are generally always going to want to pick up. Granted, there is still a cost to picking it up, and especially in the early turns of the game, that cost is more expensive than it would otherwise be later because the econ of those first few turns is so regimented in terms of just staying strong and staying tempo. So interesting things to consider here with Overconfidence, but yeah, definitely the fact that you could hang on to it for as long as you want. I'm assuming I should maybe read the blurbs at the top real quick. Let's just go through them. So, yeah, it's added to your hand for whenever to use whenever you want it. So that's a confirmation to me. Seems like you can, I didn't want to ironically be overconfident in that interpretation, but it looks like that's going to be a pretty good way to use that card. Give the minion stats equal to your tavern tier. This is a hero power that costs 1 to use. and I don't really like that hero power. It is something that is strong to use on turn 3 specifically when you have 5 gold. However, it's going to feel like a little bit of a letdown because then you're just getting a banana out of it. You're getting +2/+2, a tavern banana. And that's not super exciting when there's a whole bunch of tier 1 spells that do that as well. And if this showed up and cost you your spell slot, as opposed to like just any of the tier 1 2-cost things, Recruit a Trainee or Enchanted Lasso, didn't really bring that up, but on turn 3, those are going to be fantastic spells to hit. Lantern Light, I think you're going to be pretty disappointed to see most of the time there. Again, you can hang on to it. It will get better over time. You should probably just use it right away, though, for the +2/+2. And you're not going to be super happy about it either. Chef's Choice, choose a minion. Get a different minion of the same type. Okay, you just straight up get it. Again, this is Econ. This fits into that turn 3 super easily, so that seems pretty good. Your next 3 refreshes cost 0. It is cool that you can stack refreshes. I don't like that you can't stack them in like a super great way. Like if you cast this multiple times, then it doesn't stack. Which has always made me feel a little bit some type of way with like refreshing anomaly in the game as well. Just realized I can make everything a little bit bigger. How refreshes stack isn't super important in terms of evaluating leaf through the pages. Just a small thing I wanted to touch on. Realistically, like in the end game, this is a discount. You're paying 2 gold to get 3 value worth of something. And in the late game, refreshes are actually worth a lot more. In the early game, they're not really super important. They're definitely good and they can set you up well. And I can't really speak with like full authority on this, but I think just playing whatever you find is like kind of fine in the early game, and refreshing for specific things isn't super important. However, there would certainly be heroes and things where this is more important than other times. Things that come to mind are like Scourfin, Prickly Piper, Felemental. What's another one? There was another tier 3 card that I was thinking of. Potentially like Zesty Shaker. There are some really good things on like tier 3 that are potentially really important to hit. I don't think it's going to be worth all of this gold early in the game. It'll be fine if you cast this spell on turn 3. I don't think you're like incredibly excited to do so though. Let's move on to another tier 2. Increase your maximum gold by 1. Okay, this is cool. I did not know they were going to go for this. Now, wait, is this just ramp? Wait, this is maybe... If this is ramp, this is really good. So there's either 2 ways this plays out. Either you cast this and then, like, you have 5 gold currently, you cast it, and then the next turn you have 7 gold. And it might be both of these things. I feel like it's just that one, though. Okay, maybe that's not as broken as I thought it was. But in order for this spell not to just be totally dead, then I feel like it also allows you to go from 10 max gold at the end of the game to 11 max gold, which is cool. That one is more cool and does pay for itself because it costs you 3 gold now, but then every turn from then on, you are gaining 1 extra gold. So any turn beyond 3, more than that, then you are getting an advantage from that. It still takes it 4 turns to start to pay off, so it definitely falls off like super late into the game, but I feel like that's gotta be what it means. But it might also ramp you. I feel like it has to also ramp you, otherwise it's dead in the early game. So I feel like this takes you from 5 gold to 7 gold, and it takes you from 10 to 11. I'm not totally sure on that, and I'm not sure if it takes you from 5 to 7, then will you also cap at 11? Or does it end? And if it ends, then it kind of reminds me of like an XP spell in Storybook Brawl, because there's a cap. There's a finite limit to how much you can care about XP. Once you have hit the XP cap, you stopped seeing XP spells in Storybook Brawl. Maybe Strike Oil could be similar. And once you have 10 gold, you can no longer strike oil. This one is really intriguing, and I'm excited by the fact that we're like exploring some new spaces that I haven't seen from all of the spells in Storybook Brawl. Pretty cool, regardless of how that plays out. Hasty Excavation. Gain 1 gold. This costs health to buy instead of gold. Okay, so this is just the demon. This is, except like you're never going to triple it, and it also won't trigger your demon synergies when you play it. But it similarly will get discounted by Soul Rewinder, and it's probably pretty useful in the early game most of the time to just get that 1 gold. However, the demon is much more useful in the early game because it also gives you a 3/3 if you're a little bit behind on tempo. So it's going to be worse than that in all capacities. I'm also noticing that all spells have the type Tavern. I imagine that is something that we're more or less going to see on, or I think we're going to see that on every spell. But there are going to be some things like Slimy Shield, unless Slimy Shield is removed, because now there's a spell that gives taunt, so Slimy Shield might just be gone, and some minion effects kind of relegated to now being spells. But there are still 3 types of 4 types of 5 types of spells, 6 types of spells that I can think of in Hearthstone Battlegrounds. Tavern spells, spells for minions, spellcrafts, triple rewards, like things that allow you to discover the Dark Moon prizes, and then the things that are the Dark Moon prizes themselves. I feel like that's most of them. Probably covers most things. Like the Kidnap Sack is technically a spellcraft, and I feel like that's probably everything. But now we've got a new type of spells in Tavern spells, and things that previously triggered off of spells that was mostly Naga related things. Some of those are still going to probably trigger off of Tavern spells. Some might specifically say Spellcraft or have already specifically said Spellcraft. And then I did see there's also some new things coming that specifically care about Tavern spells as well. Yeah. I don't know what I'm getting at there, but just that there could be synergy with Tavern spells in the same way that there is synergy, or just spells in general, in the same way that there's currently synergy with the Demon that costs 3 health and is a similar investment, reckless or not. So, no. This was Hasty Excavation. This is reckless investment. Gain 3 gold next turn, lose 2 gold. So you really only gain 2 gold total. I mean, you net 0. This is nothing. This is Lucky Coin, or sorry, not Lucky Coin, Tavern Coin, just in a different flavor. And I think I briefly saw this one as well, and I was like, man, are all spells just going to be like ways to shift around your gold but not actually gain you any gold? So it's important to realize that that's what this is, though you do have a lot of flexibility with that. And again, it's never bad to have this, to cast it, with the exception being that if it's your 3rd spell on the new hero, maybe you should have looked at the new hero first, because he adds some interesting context to all of these spells, but he's going to be probably busted regardless. So it doesn't really matter. Give him any taunt. If it already has it, remove it. Yeah, so I think we're going to see the taunt granting minions go away in favor of taunt granting spells. 1 coin for +5/+5 is a pretty good rate. There's lots of ways to get more value than +5/+5 on things like Divine Shield with Fleeting Vigor. It's trading econ for tempo. tempo doesn't really give you back econ most of the time, though you could like save a fleeting vigor and use it on a turn where you are also overconfident on yourself, and that'll help you win. That pays for the fleeting vigor and the overconfidence, and then you're up 1 gold at the end of the exchange. So it's worth it if you can guarantee a win with fleeting vigor. Otherwise, there's not a huge incentive to just win one individual combat that might not even be worth 1 gold. Is going to be worth 1 gold sometimes, though. Give your minions +1/+1 for 2 is a pretty good rate. We saw this costing 3 in Storybook Brawl, so giving your minions +1/+1 for just 2 is pretty good. And the biggest difference is that like Fleeting Vigor is fleeting. It's only 1 turn. This you're going to get to keep. You're going to get to stack with multiple different bonuses. It could be as much as +7/+7 just by itself. And you can even like hang on to it for 1 additional turn just to get a little bit more value out of it. I really don't think you're going to want to cast this super early on in the game, but it could especially be good on like whatever turn it is where you, I guess it's turn 6, where you have 8 gold. But I think that's a pretty good rate if we compare that to Blessing of Athena from Storybook Brawl. I'm not sure how much I want to edit this video to include all of the Storybook Brawl equivalent spells, but yeah, there's definitely a lot of knowledge that we get to bring into this season as Storybook Brawl players, so that's kind of fun. And the fact that that is above rate compared to the Storybook Brawl comparison, I think is pretty good. Now, Econ's a little bit different in Storybook Brawl. You cap out at 12 coin at the end of the game, which means you've got a little bit more to spend, and minions have a variety of different costs from 2 to 6, which potentially, I don't know how that impacts everything. I still haven't figured that out. Echoing Roar, this is a Dark Moon prize, like tier 2 or something. Just reskinned here a little bit. Give a friendly minion at the end of your turn. Gain +2/+2. I'm pretty sure that's like nearly identical text. Seems pretty good for 2 gold, because that gets to get pretty out of crazy. And there are some things that works really well on. Doesn't work on Free Flying Feathermane. Does work really well on Deflectobot, for instance, among other things. Natural Blessing, tier 3 gold, choose a minion, give all minions the cherry type with it, +3/+2. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's basically going to be a Blessing of Athena, Shiny Ring. I was checking to see if Shiny Ring pumped up things in the shop, which this technically could, and you can do some fun stuff with it with Curator, or in the end game with the guy with all the types. That's gonna break anything that cares about types, of course, but overall it's just like reasonable beyond that. I think that Zesty Shaker specifically says Spellcraft when you cast your first Spellcraft on this each turn. Otherwise, that could be a cool thing to take advantage of as well. With Natural Blessing, here we go. Staff of Enrichment. Minions in the Tavern have +2/+2 this game. Great value. You aren't going to be able to loop it easily like with Felemental, but really good value here. 3 coin for +2/+2 on the Tavern for the rest of the game. I think this is almost always castable, and you're going to want to cast that whenever you see it. So this seems really cool. Replace all cards in the Tavern with ones of a higher tier. Interestingly, it's cards, right? So it will replace spells as well. But replacing everything is really, really cool for just 2 coin. I think I'm personally going to be casting this one a lot. That's just something I really love doing. I love polywaggling and mix-a-whizzling and True Love's kissing things and Ritual of Growth, being able to do that to everything. Just has a lot of fun opportunities associated with it. And I think what I'll be doing a lot of is like purchasing this when I am tier 4 and then leveling up to tier 5 and then casting it. You could also cast 2 of them because you can hang on to them in your hand, which allows you to stack them, which is something I love doing with Faceless Manipulator in the game as well. So yeah, this seems really cool, and I'm excited to do that. All right, this one is a, what do you call it? This is something I've seen before. Your battle cries trigger twice until next turn. That is going to interact with the Rylek Metalhead. It isn't going to interact. Actually, it might interact with Bran. No, I don't think it does. I think Bran also says trigger twice and doesn't say triggers an additional time, which is what it would need to say in order for the blessing to work with him. Though I could be wrong. Maybe it does work. I feel like this one is a little bit expensive. I've never found that I am super interested in using Bran's Blessing. It does work really cool. It does cool things with young Murkai. But other than that, I'm never super impressed when I pick this up. And I generally wind up ditching this when it is a Dark Moon prize. That's what I was looking for. When it's a Dark Moon prize, I don't wind up doing anything super crazy with it. But I could be wrong. Your Death Rattles trigger twice, I think, is actually better. And I don't believe that this is currently something that's available. The reason that this is better is because your Death Rattles, I'm thinking Prickly Piper, Scourfin, and the Undead, that's really good, as well as Rylek Metalhead. These are all things that you are building around and scaling with, and I just named all the scaling ones. There's other Death Rattle effects in the game that I don't think this will be as good with, but I guess if you look at it that way, it's really just like one additional trigger for all of the effects. So that's not that great, but I do think that it's probably worth, excuse me, it's probably worth 3 gold most of the time. Though if you compare, I'm forgetting the name of the Undead, and I have a nickname for him too, which is why I'm probably not able to remember his name, but there's a Undead that's Death Rattle, give your Undeads +1 attack for the rest of the game, and then there's Nerubian Death Swarmer, which is a battle cry. So by paying for this, if you only have one Anubarak, sounds right. If you only have one Anub, then you are only basically purchasing a Death Swarmer by purchasing Titus's Tribute. Now you might also get a little bit more out of your combat, like if you have hand or something, and forgive me if all of these cards aren't actually still in the game at this point, but that is like one thing that I immediately see it being useful for. But at tier 4, you might not have multiple Anubs at that point, at which point this is just like buying a Death Swarmer, really. So this gets more use when you've got multiple Death Rattles, but I think that it's probably better than the Battle Cry version of the same spell. Primal Staff, your end of turn effects trigger twice this turn. I think that this one has a lot of applications because there's some end of turn effects that are just really good. If you use this on a turn where you're activating Upbeat Duo, for instance, then I think you are really excited by that. Notably, all of these things say twice. They don't say an additional time, so they won't stack with themselves, which I think is intentionally worded there, of course, but you can still get a lot of value out of a few different end of turn effects, and I think the Primal Staff will probably be the most played out of the 3 that we just looked at there. Misplaced T set, give a friendly minion of each type +3/+3. It's cute. I don't think that Menagerie comps are really great, though, ever. I do think that we're getting new menagerie tools that trigger off of tavern spells. And so like if you're already doing that, then it's good. But otherwise, there's just so many better payoffs for dedicating yourself to a specific type in Hearthstone Battlegrounds that I don't think this is really going to turn the needle too much. Discovering a Battlecry minion is good, but for 3 gold, that's pretty expensive. I think this one's going to be a skip for me most of the time. Yeah, I don't like it. I think that a lot of these tier 4 spells are kind of skips, kind of duds here. Discovering a Death Rattle minion, again, I think that has a little bit more applications than Battlecry, just because Death Rattle has some really strong build-around cards. Battlecry does too, but not nearly in the same way. And of course, you're probably going to be locked to your current tier. You're not going to be able to cast this when you're tier 4 and discover Ghast Coiler or something, for instance. You're only going to be able to find tier 4 things at maximum. Defender's Rights give a friendly minion +8/+8 in taunt. That's a lot of stats. And taunt. So there's definitely, I doubt that there are minions in the game still that can grant taunt. It's a lot of stats. It's hard for that much stats to be irrelevant. It's good early on. And the fact that it gives taunt means it's relevant in the late game and can take things out of range of other things as well. Yeah, I mean, it's good. Nothing much more to say about this. There's comps that need to have taunt in the late game. I would have maybe I think I do like the terminology of if it already has taunt, remove it. Maybe for flavor purposes, they don't want everything to have that, and for balance purposes, of course, too, there should be some risk in giving something taunt that allows for counterplay from your opponent. But I'm thinking specifically of like Divine Shield Quillbore comps, or even taunting up a Deflectobot occasionally. And then even just giving taunt to some beast thing so that your Banana Slammas are a little bit safer. This seems pretty good across the board, and I think that it's fine. Actually, I think that it's a really good cost at 3 energy, or 3 coin. I think that that's a cost that you're going to be willing to pay. Discover of your most common type is cool. I think that that's probably worth 4 gold. Most of the time, a discovery of your type is pretty good. If you have one thing of each type, maybe this will allow you to grab the Phalanx. Probably not. It's probably just a way to keep going on your current tribe. I don't think it's great, but I think if you've got like 4 gold left at the end of the turn, it's probably better than just rolling to discover a minion for that's probably a little bit more likely to be relevant. Okay, this is interesting. So Storybook Brawl was they did have some life gain in the game, right? But they were pretty stingy with it, and this is an interesting way to be stingy with life gain that also doesn't work in the early game, and most of the time doesn't work in the early game. And then in the late game, you can only use it once per turn. So you know why I think this is really important? Because it's much easier to go infinite in Hearthstone. So this is kind of like a cap on that, because otherwise everybody's just hat-balling and rolling for health in a way that they probably didn't want, though. Yeah, it felt different in Storybook Brawl, because when you went infinite, the additional health didn't really matter that much, because you were probably just going to win. But in Hearthstone, you can go infinite and lose a lot. So I think that's going to be the most common time that this gets cast, is when you're like playing Infinite Pirates already. The APM is going to be crazy with spells. Hopefully the animations aren't too crazy for them. But yeah, that, sorry, I just have to check something on my phone real quick. All right, I'm still good. Yeah, armor stash is an interesting way to kind of get ahead of some of the potential issues, because I don't know, I mean, a little bit of life gain is fun for those moments that it matters, and this is really good if it puts you above the damage cap. That's going to be another time that you're going to want to cast it. Otherwise, it's probably like a late game thing, but the fact that you can do it once a turn is kind of interesting too. And I'm looking forward to this thing keeping me alive. You definitely, you know what, it's actually really good design other than the fact that it's tier 5. So that's the other reason that you can't cast it early on in the game, because it's a tier 5 spell. But it's kind of cool that it encourages you to not just pursue life gain as a strategy for people that aren't as experienced with the game. So I think that that's good. I don't think it's a good spell, is what I'm getting at. I'm saying I think it's well designed, and I'm interested to see how it plays out. But I don't expect this to be super important, other than when it puts you over the damage cap, and of course just those random times where it wins you the game that you shouldn't have won. So seems cool, and it's much better than them like putting ice block just in the game. That would have been crazy. Trigger a friendly minion's battle cry for 5 seems great, or for 3 coin at tier 5 seems great. That's basically just the dragon, which might be getting removed if Dreamer's Embrace is getting added to it. I'm not super familiar with everything getting added and coming in, as you can tell, but triggering a friendly minion's battle cry. It's funny that this is considered so much better, not in cost, but just in terms of the tavern tier. The main way that this is good is because you can hit a golden minion and have that do something fun. It doesn't immediately seem like crazy good, other than like maybe in dragons or in an element in a elemental comp. But I mean, this mechanic already existed in the game, just in the form of a dragon, and now it's a spell. Interestingly, okay, this is important. This costs more than the dragon, because the dragon you could use it to trigger a battle cry and then you could sell it. So the fact that this costs 3 just straight up means that it is actually more expensive. It's fine though, and potentially even better that it isn't a minion, because sometimes it's hard to like, you have to clear room just so that you can use the battle cry, and then you're like selling off the battle cry afterwards too. So that part is nice. And yeah, it is just a little bit more expensive that you have to pay for that reward. Discover a new hero power is great. This is Mask. We saw this as a tier 4 for 4 gold in Storybook Brawl. Wait, that's not true. It was a tier 6 for 4 gold, right? I think so. Yeah, I think you probably couldn't get it until tier 6 in Storybook Brawl. Tier 5 is a much more common tier to stop at in Hearthstone Battlegrounds. I think this is going to be one that I play a lot of, especially as a Reno enjoyer. Now there is a huge incentive on Reno to level up, find something cool, level up again, and get the heck out of there. And I'm going to be, yeah, I'll probably be casting this one a lot. At only 3 gold, seems like it's a pretty good deal. There are going to be some heroes, of course, that you are not going to want to transform out of, but there's definitely some that you will want to. Looks like you can't skip it either. You'll have to pick a new hero power, unless, you know, maybe they change that down the line. Discovering a buddy. Wow. Okay, so they're adding in some other mechanics into the spells. That's really interesting. I guess I'm going to have to learn a lot more about buddies. The fact that now buddies are always available changes a lot of other evaluations, like Dreamer's Embrace can now trigger the friendly battle cry of a buddy. That's crazy. That adds a lot of... So one of my problems, and I've brought this up a lot actually, that I have with ETC in the game is that it has access to things that just nobody has access to. Now everybody has access to discovering a buddy. I wonder if there will be a wait for your own buddy. Probably not, because the new heroes don't have buddies. And that probably also means that you can't discover the buddies of like the really specific ones. Like, I don't think Cookie the Cook falls into this, but there's like one that says like, you know, there's certain buddies that I don't even know them because they don't have them in the ETC pool or the Bring a Buddy anomaly pool, because they call out specific hero powers and synergize only with that. I think we won't see those with Buddy Up, even if you are playing that hero, probably just from a simplicity sake. But I like the fact that now at least everyone has some access to buddies, even if ETC has way too much access to them and gets to play like a whole different game than everybody else. This is still going to open up a lot of crazy things that I'm already just thinking about. Like, this is now like the only spell that I care about because it lets me do unique things, which is what I was saying at the beginning of the video is my favorite part about anomalies. And now we always have a little bit of interest and mystery that is in there. Start of combat, set a random enemy minion's health to 1. In Storybook Brawl, this only costs 2. Was also a tier 5 spell, I believe. Generally not something super great, but it's something that you could potentially get a little bit of use of in the end game. Yeah, now we might start to see some combat spells. Did not think about that. Kind of forgot about combat spells. Forgot about Pigomorph. We'll see how far Battlegrounds is willing to push this. This is one of the weaker ones. Yeah, interesting. We did not see any early game combat spells other than the +5/+5 this turn only. Spin the wheel. I'm going to cast that every time as well. Nothing more to say about that. That's pretty sweet. Random minion in the Tavern Golden. You can control it, and the fact that you can pay 5 and then sell some things. Okay, well, actually, you know what? No, this is really good. This is just knighthood. And again, all of the things that are tier 6 in Storybook Brawl are maybe down to tier 5 in Battlegrounds because the game tends to end on tier 5 maybe a little bit more frequently. And they want people to be able to see and to interact with these spells. So you can buy this spell for cheaper, hang on to it anytime, and then you can cycle through some things in the tavern and you can make it so that you are deciding which minion in the tavern is going to be golden, and then you do get the triple reward from that. So there's some upside there as well. I think it's good. I think it's like a little bit of win more, a little bit you have to be ahead. But I think it's going to be really cool. I don't think it's as good as some of the other things. I don't even think it's as good as Jaws of Fate or Buddy Up. It's expensive, right? But I think that there's going to be a lot of high roll moments and there's going to be ways to press your advantage with Golden Touch as well in a way that I am looking forward to. Now we're getting to tier 6. All right, so we are going to get some tier 6 spells as well. Set a minion stats to 2020. Maybe that means we are now done with the guy that makes something a 15/15. I would actually be pretty happy to see that go, other than like the fact that I never made the Rylek Metalhead comp with that, but that was like a very, very silly comp anyways that I don't really think I need to have made. But set a minion to 2020 only for 2 seems pretty cool. and it'll allow you to take something with a cool ability to some nice stats in the end game as well, like a Banana Slammer or potentially a Free Flying Feathermane. Just give that plus 15, plus 15. Seems pretty cool. You will have to use it on the Feathermane while it's in the shop, of course, but that's fine. Get a bunch of spells. How much did this cost? This cost 1 in Storybook Brawl. In Hearthstone Battlegrounds, it's going to cost you twice as much, which is expensive. There will be a lot of spells that you can just cycle through. So if you have things that are triggering off of spells, I think there's a little bit more. I mean, that's the biggest difference, really. Not even just that you can cycle through spells, is that you have no limit to how many spells you can cast in a turn. So finding this means that you can cast all those spells, even if they're not great. Like, bring in a buddy, sure, make it golden, whatever. That won't actually work. But yeah, that is something that does make this spell a lot more powerful than it is in Storybook Brawl. Now, one of the reasons that you would almost always cast this in Storybook Brawl is because then it was just like a free roll as well. And this might even be more so. However, it's going to cost you an additional gold over rolling. So you do kind of have to profit off of it a little bit. Seems sweet though. Seems sweet. Lost Staff of Hamul. Choose a minion, refresh the tavern with minions of its type. So you get to see a bunch of minions of a certain type. Interesting thing just with the tavern in general, I believe the tavern will now cap at 6 minions and then 1 spell. I believe that to be true. Yeah, because 7 is like the cap in Hearthstone. Can't have more than 7. That's just the cap overall. So that probably still holds true. I think they probably got rid of the Naga Elemental that puts things into the shop because that thing was already kind of awkward, and now with a spell in the tavern, that is just not going to work as a golden minion. So it's kind of just a weird thing in the game anyways. But Lost Staff of Hamul kind of does an impression of that card. That might even be the card that I'm thinking of, might even be called Hamul in some of the lore or something. This is good. This is something that you'll probably want to cast, I think, and I think you will still get a new spell in your refresh shop as well. And tier 6, give your minions +4/+4. In this super late game, like, I guess sure, why not, but that's like 4 rolls that you could be using, and sometimes that +4/+4 is just like totally irrelevant. So I think no. I think we're going to skip that one. Giving a minion a Divine Shield is really powerful, and I was curious what they could get away with costing this at. Honestly, 5 seems right. It's still going to be a steal in the... because at some point it's like the only way to upgrade your board is you're like infinitely scaling, and then you've got to give some things Divine Shield. So seems good to me. And that's the end of the spells. We also have some new heroes. I will make this a little bit smaller. First is Snake Eyes. You roll a 6-sided die, gain that much gold, and then it cannot be used again for that many turns. Weird. It's a weird hero. Doesn't really have any synergy with spells. I like luck. I think that's fun. RNG is cool, and figuring out how to use this effectively with the different gold variables. I think it's going to have like an interesting econ sub-game to figure out, which is what a lot of heroes in Battlegrounds feel like. It's like, okay, well, there's just a bunch of weird stuff going on, and if you miss, so if you hit a 1, I think then can you use it again next turn? Probably. Yeah, I think so. So and then it just paid for itself. So there's no real losing. It's just all upside. No reason. Can't really come up with a great reason not to just use it turn 1, other than there might be like better econ points if you waited till turn 3 and weaved it into your econ then. But it doesn't really hurt to just use it turn 1 either. And you could like level up turn 1 if you get a really lucky roll. So maybe that's what Snake Eyes will do. Seems powerful. Early game econ is always powerful. And it's basically just gain 1 gold a turn, I think. Just with a reskin. I think it's effectively gain 1 gold a turn, right? Maybe a little bit less because you have to spend a gold to use it. Yeah, so it's like gain 1 gold per turn. Is it gain 5 or point? What's 87.87% percent of a gold each turn? If you take out 1/6 of that, that will be the average that you lose. It's powerful. It's powerful to gain gold. This is another way to gain gold. Every third tavern spell you buy costs 0. This is the guy that I probably should have brought up before we looked at all of the spells, but I mainly just wanted to look at all the spells in this video. I suppose we are going to take a look at the new heroes and things as well. This guy seems really good. He seems really, really good. Things costing 0 is just always great. And yeah, the new hero that synergizes with the new mechanic is generally pretty busted, but I think this is going to be one of the better, if not probably just the best hero. They want the spells to be pretty good so that way you interact with them a bunch, and otherwise, like, what are we doing here? So something that like rewards you for doing what they already want you to do is of course just going to be busted. And even if the spells are bad, which some of them might be a little bit, and it's good to have bad spells, even if some of them are bad, they're going to make the spells better so more people play with them, which in turn is going to make reliquary research better down the line. Then we've got one more, Dr. Holiday, get a random tavern spell. Okay, that's also kind of econ. Hard to figure out exactly where this guy falls. We just kind of got an idea of the big picture. I mean, I think it's going to be good too. I don't think it's going to be quite as good as the choice of spells. But for 1 gold, getting a random tavern spell, every tavern spell is worth at least 1 gold. Even the not great ones, sure, it's going to stink that you missed, but you're never like getting a bad deal here. And sometimes you're getting just like an incredible, incredible deal. This guy might even be better. Who knows? This seems good. They're all going to come up with a little bit more of frequency in the next 2 weeks. We're going to see some new minions as well. Oh, I did see this guy. I scanned through all of this a little bit. This thing seems like an always buy. Maybe I'm wrong because there's a lot of different ways to manipulate econ now in the early game. But just winning your first 2 combats and then selling this on turn 3 to become level 3, even that seems like fantastic. So I think that this is going to be pretty good. Then we have this Divine Shield Avenge 4, give a random friendly minion Divine Shield. Not permanently. Don't think this is great. Yep, it's not great. It's kind of cute, but yeah, not great. Battlecry Discover a tavern spell. This is a tier 5 minion. I think that this is really good, especially there's a lot of really good spells on tier 5. I will probably be buying this more often than not. It just seems really sweet, and I'll then pick up the sweet spells that we discover. The Mad Matador Taunt, when this would take damage, deal it to a random enemy minion instead, once per combat and then twice per combat on the golden version. This is like a really interesting new type of scam unit. It's cool. It's yeah, kind of like it's like a vampiric divine shield. Can't reset it, of course. There's no real other synergies that I can immediately think of that work with this, which is going to be the downside of it, the fact that there aren't synergies that work with it. One thing that's kind of cool is a 0 attacking character. You can put it at the front. I don't know. I don't think it's that great, though. I don't think it's something that you'll actively want to go for most of the time. I do think that this is pretty crazy for a reward for casting spells. This is Storm King, right? +1/+2 for each tavern spell you've cast this game, and then +2/+4. Now, I believe Storm King was +2/+2 for the non-golden, non-tripled version. So this is definitely a downside on Storm King. I think they're being a little bit conservative, but I think they also aren't conservative with spells, and there's no limit to how many spells you can cast. I think this is going to be a fun build-around card to play with that I'm excited for. And there is another card here that triggers every time you cast a tavern spell. This is the new Menagerie payoff. I don't really see this one being super useful. Menagerie payoffs in the end game are also so much weaker than Menagerie payoffs early game, because then you can build around them. So yeah, I'm just not super excited by this. Wind Fury, this minion always attacks an enemy minion that it can kill if possible. I think that's interesting. There's it'll always attack Leroy, or it will always attack some type of scam if possible. So that part's a little bit awkward, and I think there's a lot of ways to play around it. But this is, it's a lot of stats, 10, 20. Seems good to eat with your demons, and seems good to discover early on in the game. Yeah, the fact that it can get teched against with cards that your opponent already wants to be playing, just trades 1-for-1 with them. But those cards have other ways to gain value, specifically the Poison Murloc thing. So not super excited by that overall. The Tavern offers an extra Tavern spell after each refresh, and the Golden version offering 2 Tavern spells. Now, we've seen this before in Storybook Brawl, so I already kind of know something you have to look out for, and that is the fact that when you're having additional Tavern spells, you're actually taking the slots away from your minions, potential minions that you can find. I think this is really cool. They made it an elemental pirate, so you're going to see it a lot, and it's cool flavor too, with a landlubber, and it is of the earth here. I think you got to watch out for it, but I think I'm going to be picking it up a bunch because playing with the new spells seems fun to do. 09, at the end of your turn, gain 1 attack. Repeat for each card you played this turn. So that is going to count spells. It is going to be an end of turn effect for dragons. Seems cool. I'm kind of just trying to get through everything here at this point. Whenever you cast a Tavern spell, your elementals get pumped up here. And, sorry, I'm, okay, great. Now I can give this a little bit more insight. Oh, wow. Wait, no, this is... Okay, so Nomi's gone, and this is powerful and good and strong. No, this seems really cool. This is a cool build around on tier 4, and yeah, it's a nice payoff for elementals that, again, makes you do what you already want to do. Now, it's tricky when you have things that care about your spells, like some of the heroes and some of the minions now that we're seeing. That actually makes a really interesting aspect to balancing your spells, because now people are going to cast spells just because they want to cast any spell, rather than specifically wanting to cast a specific spell. Things like this are also really good in this game because there's so many spells that just replace their gold for themselves, that we talked about a few times during this video. Living Azurite seems really good though overall, and I definitely think I'll be playing with this. Tavern spell, 1 Tavern spell each turn costs health instead of gold to buy. Okay, that's pretty big. That's definitely a cool way to take damage. I'm wondering if we're losing any ways to take damage. Like, is Prince Malchezaar still going to be in the game? Discover a tavern spell. Discover... Oh, spellcraft. Discover a tavern spell. Okay, that's pretty big. I wonder if we're losing Orgoza. This just seems cool. Spellcraft is a spell, and then the tavern spell is a spell. Now, this specifically says whenever you cast a tavern spell, a little bit of a bummer. It could have been interesting to see how this works with Naga, though. Yeah, no, that's broken. Okay, never mind. I take it back. This seems really cool, though. I'm excited for this one. There's a lot of like high roll potential with it. And Death Rattle gain a random tavern spell. That seems really good. At tier 3, it's going to be locked. The spells are going to be locked to your current tier, I assume. That's a really good Death Rattle. That's a Death Rattle that I would love to trigger multiple times through the use of the spell. And this can probably give you that spell, which then gives you more stuff. So like the more of these you have, the more likely you are to just kind of not quite go infinite, but do some crazy stuff. I did see this one. This is kind of confusing to me because of how innocuous this seems, but maybe I'm not like fully thinking it through. It seems like it loses a lot of fights in the early game, beats some things, but it loses against like most things in the early game. So not sure what it does. The skeletons are assumedly undeads. So actually in the late game, it's a pretty good undead because then it gets to get all of the undead bonuses on all of those things. Okay, that's interesting. And then this, at the start of your turn. Oh, okay. That's what we're doing with the other thing. At the start of your turn, destroy the undead to the left of this to gain +4. So destroy effects are going to trigger death rattles. So if you can pick up some harmless boneheads, feed them to the grave gobbler, you're potentially going to get some triples off of that by getting a bunch of extra skeletons. Okay, tokens are back. There's a roundabout way to find them, but actual tokens are back in Hearthstone Battlegrounds again. Give a different friendly undead reborn. Oh, this will work with the Grave Gobbler too, because I did see Soul Splitter was gone. But this is now like a permanent Soul Splitter. Okay, yeah, that's going to be really strong. It is expensive to grobble. Why do I keep saying grobble? It is expensive to gobble up graves, but there's some really cool synergies here that are exciting. Death Rattle Reborn. Oh wait, how will Reborn work with the Gobbler? I'm just assuming that it triggers Death Rattles. I think it will also trigger Reborns, which would mean that if this happens during the start of combat, then it's a permanent +1/+1 as well. And then you get to eat it up again. And it's just a Reborn Death Rattle. Okay, so undeads are like totally new, totally different now. Destroy a friendly undead to gain 3 gold. Okay, so yeah, all of these things do definitely work the way that I was saying, and you're supposed to destroy undeads. There's a one-time effect, there's an every turn effect. Reborn Death Rattle. Give your undead +6 health. This isn't like immediately as impressive, but maybe we're gone with a noob, and these are like the new style of undeads, and we're gonna see it with the 5-cost guy that has Avenge +1/+1. Maybe that's what these things look like now. So maybe undeads are just a brand new tribe at this point. Yeah, here's another new undead. The end of your turn, destroy the undead to the left of this and resummon it. And then the golden version destroys adjacent undead and resummons both of them. Okay, so undead, just a brand new tribe. I'm into it. Let's see what they can do. I think maybe we are getting some new Quillbore stuff here too. At the start of your turn, discard a spell, which blood gems are spells. So once you get this active, it's good to go. It might accidentally discard spells that you actually want to hang on to. That could be a little bit weird. But you discard a spell to get 3 blood gems. Once you get it kicked off though, it should continue to just turn blood gems into more blood gems and just gives you 2 blood gems at the start of each turn, just with a little bit of an upstart. That seems totally reasonable to me. The start of your turn, discard a spell to gain 3 gold. Okay, so another thing in a similar capacity, and that's definitely worth it. Playing both of these seems good. That's a nice little combo to gain 3 gold per turn. Whenever you cast a tavern spell, that's not going to be blood gems, play a blood gem on another friendly Quillboar. Kind of hard to evaluate that one. Whenever a blood gem is played on this, play a blood gem on a different friendly minion. Sure. And at the end of your turn, gain 2 attack. Okay, so now there's 2 dragons that trigger end of turn. And another one. Okay, that's good. That's good. Dragons have been very awkward, I think, with all of the like start of turn things that just like aren't permanent scaling. But now there are some cool new dragons, and this guy doesn't really activate super early, but then will eventually get to activate. So that's pretty cool. At the end of your turn, get a Smolderwing. Oh, wow. So they're just going to let you do the token thing. And dragons are very, very much an end of turn effect, which increases the power of all of those, or just the end of turn spell as well. And then we've got one last dragon. I mean, maybe there's a whole bunch more dragons, I'm not sure. The end of your turn, get 2 random tavern spells. And again, that can give you the end of turn spell. So all of this seems pretty cool here. Whenever this is attacked, gain Venomous. Ooh. Okay, so giving this Divine Shield, giving this Taunt, those are going to be really powerful things, right? Venomous, not poisonous. Kind of forget which one's which. Seems cool. It's more difficult to summon from your hand with Basgil, but yeah, just giving it Taunt, Divine Shield seems like a powerful thing, and that's going to be a lot easier in the new season as well with spells. Death Rattle, deal 5 damage to the lowest health enemy minion twice. Okay, it's just bombs. It's probably well costed, nothing super crazy. Avenge 3, get a random tavern spell. This is going to be a fun one. I would definitely try it out. No stats on it means that it's a little bit tricky to make it work. But the fact that it doesn't have attack means that it won't attack in, which is good because then other things will die and get to avenge. All right, how close are we to finishing all of this up? Looks like we are almost done, at least with the new content. That's where I'm going to stop for today. This ending has been a little bit rushed, but this video is already super long. No gameplay in this one. Maybe I'll come back and review some of this other stuff. I look, you can link in the description. You can figure it out yourself. Plus, they always do like this. Following minions have returned, and I'm like, I have no clue what these things are. Actually, I kind of do. Snail Cavalry gains +2 health permanently. Critter Wrangler, I think I just saw. Yeah, it's this. Okay, this one I don't know. This is a dragon that at the end of your turn gets bigger for each of your dragons. And I don't know what that does either. But one new minion. Let's take a look at that before we say goodbye. After you buy 3 cards, get a random tavern spell. Easy enough. Seems cool. That's going to be it for me today. Super long video. I really wanted to focus my time on the spells because that is where I already have some familiarity and where I think this video might be interesting. Kind of blew through all the minions at the end. I'm going to go have dinner now, but for today, that is going to be it for me. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'm NoLucksGiven. Peace.